Hi, and welcome to the Pat Sheranian Show, folks. I'm your host, Monica Barbour, just hosting here live for the fabulous Pat Sheranian today. She's absent, and grateful to be able to be here for her. If you're listening to 1480 AM, or if you're listening to us at www.utahvalleylive.com, again, utahvalleylive.com is where you can see the video stream. We're very grateful that you have allowed us to enter to your home or your cars via these avenues. And today we have in-house a very special guest, Jeremy Friedbaum. And I've known Jeremy for a very, very long time. And
you don't want to say how long.
We don't want to say how long. But I thought Jeremy has a very compelling story, so compelling that in fact we've already started to produce a documentary on the life of Jeremy, and some political views, also some religious views, and mainly about transformation and how this happens in our lives. Anyhow, without further introduction, Jeremy, where are you from?
I was born in New York City, Mount Sinai Hospital. It's about 5 blocks from the old Yankee Stadium. Yeah.
And when, because you're a Provo transplant, and there's a lot of Provo transplants.
I came out January 1st, 1977, and besides 2 years off from my mission, I've been here ever since.
And so
can't get rid of me.
And you're Mormon, is that, or Latter-day Saint?
I am a Jewish Latter-day Saint. Yes,
Yes.
I'm an active high priest.
Good.
Okay.
And we've talked a little bit about. And this was so fascinating to me, about your last name and about your family and what happened to your family and how they got here to the United States. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, my name is Friedbaum. It means tree of peace. And when I started to do my genealogy a few years ago, I thought I would find many Friedbaums, because if you've lived around Jewish people, you'll recognize Fried as a Jewish prefix.
Right.
Milton Friedman or Baum, Norman Greenbaum, and so it's sort of about as Jewish as you get. Mm-hmm. But actually, when I went looking for Friedbaum, all I could find was my uncle and my aunt and his son.
Now this is on your dad's side.
This is on my dad's side.
Okay.
And that was it. I mean, I searched all of the United States.
And this is back in New York.
Mm-hmm,
okay.
There in New York,
okay.
And I searched through South America, and I searched through Europe, and then I couldn't find anybody. And my uncle's quite old, and his son is old enough that I don't think he's going to have children. So all the Friedbaums will issue from me. I've got 4 sons, and for me it's both an honor and a responsibility.
To carry on your name, correct?
Yeah, and I think of the story in the Book of Mormon about the pruning of the olive tree, and how the original branches were sort of set aside for a long time, and it kept growing, and in the latter days you graft on that
mm-hmm.
That little bit, and I feel like that's a story of me, and so yeah, it's kind of neat. I mean, think in just a few years, Friedbaum will be an entirely Mormon name.
Yes, that's compelling. I thought that was interesting, because in reality, you have 1, 2, 3 sons.
Mm-hmm.
And when you first told me that, I thought, wow, is that really? I mean, it's not that I didn't believe you.
Yeah, the last of the Mohicans,
but the last of the Mohicans,
Friedbaums.
a real story. The last of the Mohicans here.
Yeah.
So,
well, they were unfortunately only my mother got out from her family in 1933.
Now, when you say got out, what do you mean by got out?
Oh, my family comes from Poland, Russia, Prussia. I recently found out the history behind that. When I was younger, everything cool was British. And the race car drivers, the cool ones, were British. And of course, you had the Beatles were British. And everything cool was British. Mm-hmm. And I always kind of wished I was British, just because I go. And then there was, of course,
all want their accent.
There was Sean Connery
sure.
and James Bond. I mean, in a way, I spent the first half of my life trying to be like James Bond, and my second half trying to be hopefully a lot more like Jesus Christ. But probably came closer to being more like James Bond when I was younger. But anyhow, what I found out was that the Jews were actually in London, in England, until Richard the Lionheart, at the time of the Crusades, expelled all the Jews.
Oh, so there's an
And
expulsion there as
yeah,
well.
they got expelled from England, where they were living happily for a long time, and then they went to Poland. So almost all the Polish Jews came
Okay,
through
okay, came through
England.
England, right,
So
right.
I have
Okay.
that English background that made me feel so much better.
That's right.
You know, that I was around in the
Some
time
consolation,
of
correct.
Ivanhoe or something
Uh-huh,
like that.
uh-huh.
So that was really good, yeah. And my grandparents were both born in Russia, Poland, and they were put together by matchmakers, just like you might have seen in
Okay, yeah, let's
Fiddler
talk
on the
about the
Roof.
matchmakers.
Yeah,
How
okay.
does that really work?
Well,
And you also had a grandfather that was rabbi. Maybe we're jumping ahead.
right,
But, yeah, okay, but
right.
let's go to the matchmakers
Yeah.
first.
Well, it's again, it's a lot better to watch Fiddler on the Roof than to hear me talk about it. There's somebody in the community that busybodies themselves with making matches, and when the match is made, the parents decide that's it.
Uh-huh.
And you know, America.
So it's families that know families that actually match up their children. How is that? I mean, how does
Well,
that
no,
work?
you don't have to know somebody. The matchmaker knows the people.
Okay, so it's just the matchmaker, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, the matchmaker that makes it.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, and of course, you know, the most important thing, the big rule that I violated in my life by marrying my wife was to, you know, you marry somebody Jewish.
Jewish,
So,
correct, right?
But
Now, why is that the case as well? Why is it just to keep the lineage, keep the blood pure? What is that? Religion pure? Just cohesiveness?
You-
What? I mean, I know it's a loaded question.
I'll answer like Tevye, tradition.
Okay,
I
tradition.
mean, I'm sure if you go into the Talmudic explanations of why this is done, I mean, in the Old Testament, he spends a lot of time wanting Jews to marry somebody in the covenant, but and even in the New Testament says you shouldn't be unequally yoked. So it
Right.
hasn't really changed that much, except it goes more on character. I mean, for me, well, you knew me at BYU.
I did. I knew you some time ago at BYU, the first time around. Correct.
I didn't get married till I was 32.
Right, I remember that.
And
Mhm.
I had a lot of opportunities to get married, but one of the things I was really looking for was someone who was just was as sure in their knowledge of God and as I was.
Mhm.
And so that took me a little while to find, even at BYU, to
Right,
have
and-
all things come together.
Right, and then when you came to BYU, you were Jewish, of course, from New York. However, you had joined the church back in New York. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, there's a lot that leads up to my
To that,
joining the
right.
church, but let me start sort of at my contact with the missionaries. I had become a Christian just a few weeks earlier, and I had been given the Old Testament and New Testament. Actually, it was a little Oral Roberts edition, paperback edition of the Bible. And I decided I'd read the Old Testament first, since I was Jewish, and then start the New Testament. And it took about 2 weeks. And when I got through the Old Testament, which I loved, I thought I saw visually the stories. But when I began the New Testament, something special happened. My father died when I was 4 years old. And my mother had sort of a nervous breakdown. She never
She never
recovered
recovered from that. I remember you saying that. Yeah.
And so, and she never remarried. And I had, I didn't have any male role models. Well, we had about 12 men coming through the house that I was supposed to call uncle, but that's another story.
That's another story.
But I didn't have any close male role models. And so when I was about 16, I realized this. And I realized that it would be good for me to pattern myself after a man, since I hadn't grown up with any. And I started reading biographies of famous men.
Mhm.
But they were adult biographies, and so they showed them warts and all.
Mhm, mhm.
And after reading enough of them, I realized there was no perfect man. I mean, once you get into the nitty-gritty of their character and their family life, they were all a bit odd, it seemed.
Right.
And so I gave up. But when I began the New Testament, this perfect man that I'd been searching for to model myself, boy, was I surprised to find out it was Jesus Christ.
Mhm.
You know, because in my family, you associate Christ, well, for instance, they associate Christ with the Holocaust itself.
Why
you
is
know.
that?
Well, the Germans were Christians.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. So, and the Pope, he was a
Right,
Christian.
right.
He didn't seem to be that bothered
That
by
bothered by the whole
by the
Holocaust,
Holocaust.
yeah.
And
And a lot of bitterness in the Jewish community because of that, do you think?
oh
Or
yeah,
is
so
there-
I think it's less now. I think it's less now, but when I was growing up, yeah, more so. And then I lived right next to a Catholic neighborhood, and they would delight in finding us alone in their neighborhood and beating us up, or throwing
Nice.
eggs at us at Easter, or snowballs at Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
They and calling us names, and we just had and I don't want to say this is true of all Catholics. I have a lot of Catholics that I love, and most
Sure,
of
of
my
course.
political my strongest political influences, Paul Weyrich and I'm trying to think of the
Local politicians?
Alan Keyes. No,
Oh,
they're
Alan Keyes, okay,
National
National
Keys.
Keyes.
They're Catholic, so I don't have anything against Catholics, but they had something against me, and so and so you just and you.
But was it more so just childhood kind of, picking on the kids in the neighborhood, or was it really specific? Do you
Well,
think that it started-
they had a Jew-hating priest in the
Okay.
Catholic neighborhood, and then just in I don't know, we Jews think differently, and we think there's us, and then there's the
There's
goyim,
the-
and goyim is sort of an
But
insulting
that's-
name, kind of
that's a
means
lot of
cattle,
us,
but
though. We think
but
us and them, yeah.
I still think that way
Right.
and there's things that my Jewish sensibilities when I watch the cheerleaders for BYU. And I say, well, they're just trying to sexually excite you so much that you stand up and scream and can't stand it anymore. And it just doesn't seem like a Jewish thing to do. So I still look at
You start-
things
yeah,
Jewish.
right.
I look at things very, very differently.
Well, that's how you grew up, so
Yeah.
basically, yeah.
But when I started the Old Testament, all of a sudden, this perfect person I had been looking to role model after was Christ.
And how old were you about that time?
Well, I was 20, not quite
Okay.
21.
And you were still living with your mom, or because your mom
Well,
was sick, right? I remember you saying that.
No, well, this was after school, and I had actually hitchhiked from Saratoga Springs to Montreal, and I was going to get a job on a boat to Europe because I wanted to tour Europe, but I didn't want to do it like a yuppie buying a
Right.
plane ticket. I wanted a real earthy experience, a
Mhm.
Kerouac experience, and
Mhm.
and so, but when I started the New Testament, even though I had a testimony given while reading the 53rd chapter of Isaiah that Jesus Christ was the Son of God, it wasn't until I started reading the New Testament that I appreciated his personality, and it just overtook me, and I could see his sense of humor, his warmth. Got a real feel of his character, and I just
And that was strictly through the New Testament.
yeah, and so I knelt down and I started praying for the Lord to help me help Christ, to help me be a part of his team,
Hmm.
to do something
I like
with,
that, yeah.
with
part
this
of the
love.
team.
I want to help Christ. What can I do? And I was on the floor, blurbling in tears. I mean, it was just one of those prayers that just rose from your heart and overwhelmed you. And in the middle of this blubbery prayer, there was a knock at the door, and it was the Mormon missionaries.
Yeah.
And they had actually gone out of their zone boundaries and were led to that little apartment building and went down till they found me where I was staying, and they could see I was crying, and they said, well, we're here to tell you about how the Church of Jesus Christ has been reestablished in these latter days, but we see you're upset. We could come back later. I said, no, I was just praying for guidance to help me
Yeah.
on Christ's team. Come on in. And it was. I wish somebody had made a tape recording of that meeting, because every time they'd say something that they expected a little bit of difficulty with, like, well, do you believe in angels? I said, of course I believe in angels. Like
Yeah.
Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, they're all over the place. How could you believe in God and not believe in angels? And
Right.
do you believe in prophets? Of course I believe in prophets. And so this went on for about 2 hours, and I liked everything they were saying. And
So in reality, the Old Testament kind of prepped you.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely.
because that's basically where this all comes from.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. And so eventually they had another appointment to go to, and they sort of hemmed and hawed and crossed their feet and said, well, we'd eventually like you to get baptized. And I said, well, I've never been baptized. I've only been bar mitzvahed. So, and I've read that you need to be just before you got here. So let's do it tonight. I'm ready. And they said, well, you kind of join the church when you get baptized. I said, well, all right. I was told I should look for a church to join anyhow. At the other place I am, can I maybe should I go to it first, see if I like it? So, yeah, you probably should do that. And so, but it only took me 2.5 weeks from when they found me to when I was baptized. I had all the lessons. And now the second time they saw me, I had still not been to church.
So the second appointment when
The
they came
second
back.
appointment.
Okay.
I went over to their apartment this time, and I still had not been to church. And I knocked on the door, and they said, Elder Friedbaum.
Oh.
And I said, excuse me, my name's not Elmer, it's Jeremy. No, we didn't say Elmer, we said Elder. I mean, this is how little I knew. And because I
Well, you should see how little I knew when I first joined the church at 19. I thought my name had to change to Elder as well. So, that's pretty bad. So go ahead.
That's what
I'm
we
sorry.
should do, is compare
compare
conversion stories.
stories. So,
And they said, no, elders is what we call missionaries, and we think you'd make a great missionary. And this is before I'd ever been to church. So I started asking him questions about missions, and, well, how long, is it something you do in the summer? And they said, no, it's 2 years. And I think, my chin just dropped. 2 years. That's like joining the army or something. That's a heck of a commitment. And well, what's, what does it pay? He says, well, it doesn't pay anything, you pay. Well, how much does it cost? and they said, well, it costs us, Montreal's more expensive than the rest of the world, but there are people that can help you. And then we started going into, well, how long do you work?
To do this, yeah.
And is it how many days a week? And it's all days. And well, what about your vacations? You don't get any vacations. And well, everybody in the free world gets vacations. So, well, no, not as a missionary, but it's really great. You'll really love it. And they went on and on, and more and more things just blew me away. And there's finally they get to the part where they're always together. And I asked the eventual question, what about going to the bathroom? Well, we know where he is, and then. I say, well, if you're always together, what about when you date? Because you're going out, you're knocking on doors, you're dressed well, you present yourselves well. You must have a lot of opportunities to date. You just go on double dates for 2 years? and I said, no, you don't date for 2 years. And I thought, oh, elders, because I
don't know if I can do that.
I came into the church, I've left off the interesting bits, about how I sinned to such excess that my soul became sick of it. And that's how I eventually, found God. But I said, I just need to find a girl that knows God like I do and settle down and heal my broken heart. And they said, well, if you want to get married, all you have to do is go to BYU. So that's the roundabout explanation is what brought me to Provo. There we go. I came to get married, but...
and you were old at that point? Because you already had one on a mission.
I joined in July, and my 21st birthday was in August, and then I had to spend 6 months, finishing school before I could officially transfer to BYU.
You came here for a master's program, or you came here for a
Well, I
bachelor's?
finished up my bachelor's degree, and then I got my master's at BYU.
BYU.
But,
and what did you get your master's in?
English, majoring in poetry, and
So
I
you're a
actually did my
poet?
thesis on As You Like It and Shakespeare, and I love teaching, and I had a good time, but that's another story,
I know.
Life changes, and I had to support my family, and it took too long to get beyond the adjunct professor, so I did something else that, I was actually able to pay off all my student loans and semi-retire in about 7 years.
That's pretty good.
Once I left teaching. But,
yeah.
yeah.
And no, go back to the matchmaking of your parents. Let's talk about that a little bit.
You love that.
I like that because it's fascinating.
Well, it's fascinating, but yet
because
neither of my grandparents, according to my parents, now my other relatives, I guess, have other things to say, but my parents thought that their parents did not have love in the household. Okay. That it was lacking. And so as much as the American system of courtship is quite and
It's different.
entertaining folly.
Yes.
You know, there's something to be said for having your agency when you choose someone to marry, even though you can, a lot of people pick wrong, and you know, it doesn't seem to have such a great success rate, but neither did matchmaking for my own parents, because my own parents left Judaism. My father, who everybody wanted to become a rabbi, is a very intelligent man.
Now, the rabbi was on your dad's side or your
The
mom's
rabbi was
side?
on my dad's side, but both my families were
Okay.
ultra-Orthodox
Ultra-
and very religious.
Okay.
And they wanted my father to become a rabbi, but he went to New York City College at the age of 16. He was smart. He got in there early and quickly became a card-carrying communist.
Ah, okay. Okay,
So,
that's right. I remember the story.
yeah,
Okay.
and yeah, he died when I was 4. But one of the few memories I have is he would play songs of the Russian Red Army, and we would march around the house and go up and over the furniture as he led the march to the Russian Red Army. And I guess there was a family story I heard from somebody that he was really involved, and there was a
And your mom, was she communist as well?
no.
Okay. What'd she think of it? He
Uh,
was
so-
crazy. He was what? You know,
She
just
loved him, so she put up with it. I think when he like tried to give a bicycle that my sister owned to somebody else that didn't have a bike, you know, my mother thought it was going a bit far. But he was a real ideologue, and there was an interesting story. There was a very famous film actor and singer, beautiful voice, a black man named Paul Robeson, really a giant man, and one of the great voices of the last century. But he was a communist and he an appeaser of Stalin, and he was really way out there. And for a while he was under indictment and had to hide from the authorities. And,
back in New York?
well, back in New York, and I think
Because that was really the movement back then.
yeah, it
New
was
York,
in
and then
New
it
York,
kinda
but I
spread,
think
it started.
he hit out internationally, and then when he'd sort of come back in stealthily, and I guess my father was involved in sneaking him into a rally in the trunk of his car once or something like that. So there are all sorts of stories there, and of course the funny thing is that, you know, I went through a political conversion once I joined the church, and well, a few years after I joined the church. And
So were you a communist?
No, I was never a communist.
Socialist?
But I was born in New York. I was raised to be a
You would be-
Democrat.
Okay.
And I remember shaking Robert Kennedy's hands, things like that.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, you're in New York, this is what you think.
Right.
And this is what they teach you in
Yeah,
school.
it's a whole world in New York.
Oh, yeah.
A different
Yeah,
culture, different
I remember
world.
my
So-
my third grade, well, I don't remember which grade, but it was elementary school, and the teacher saying, well, what makes this country great is that the people that founded it didn't believe in God, and so they didn't bring God into government. And I believed it. This is what I was told in elementary school. I hadn't heard any difference. I was also told that about God himself. She said, well, don't go home and tell your parents this, but there used to be all these questions that mankind couldn't answer because science
Your teacher
hadn't
was
been
saying this
developed.
to
Yeah,
you.
teacher was
Yeah,
telling
and
us.
what grade was this?
Third, fourth, something like that, pretty
So
early.
preaching pretty much
Yeah.
to the students.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so they made up gods to answer the questions like, you know, where the seasons come from, where the rain comes from, and they prayed all these different gods for the different things they didn't understand. And then there was progress. Instead of praying to a lot of gods, they just decided to pray to one. But now that science has told us what makes things happen, you know, we don't really need the concept of God anymore. That's sort of a superstition. And I believe that.
Sure. A nice teacher,
Yeah,
a leader.
so this is what I
Okay.
believed until I was about 20 years old. Now I've lost track on where that was.
Oh,
in our
okay, so the
discussion.
matchmaking. We were talking
Do
about
you
matchmaking.
want to get back to
No,
matchmaking?
we don't have to get back to the matchmaking.
Okay,
So your
because
parents.
I was not
'cause
now I did when I was teaching at BYU, I would
you were a matchmaker.
I would prayerfully consider who in the class to put together for joint projects, because I always
Ah.
had joint projects, and 4 of those people that I put together got married. So
Oh,
I
really?
I
And are they
did my-
still married?
I haven't heard of,
Uh-huh.
you know, they don't keep in touch, they don't
Right.
write letters or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I had a pretty good record as a
That's really
matchmaker.
good.
It must be in my
It's
blood.
genetic.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So, and then your dad died when you were young,
Yes, he
and
did.
your mom got sick.
Well,
She had a hard time with this.
She
had a nervous breakdown.
there's a famous hospital in New York called Bellevue,
Okay.
and she was sent there for 6
And
months.
it's a psych,
It's a psych ward.
psych ward, yeah.
And finally after 6 months, they said, well, she's not getting better, but she doesn't seem to be much of a threat to herself or anybody else. So I guess we'll let her back. And then she came back home, and poor thing. I mean, she was just,
How much
she would
different
spend a
what-
lot of time making huge lists and chain smoking and drinking either coffee or whiskey and crying or getting angry at something I did and whacking me with belts and shoes, and it wasn't good. And then
But had her personality changed that much from the time? I mean, was that
oh yeah,
the
she was.
was that the turning point for her in her
yeah,
behavior and her changing?
I remember as a kid just being so disappointed that she couldn't get back to the way she was before. And I kind of blamed her for it too, because I thought she could. Now, they talk about infantile omnipotence, where sometimes you feel it's your fault if your parents divorce or something, because you just have a feeling as a child that you should be able to do anything, like
To
keep them from
change, yeah, to
divorcing
keep
or
it,
something
yeah.
like that. And maybe I projected this on my mom, but and on the other hand, I do know some people that have allowed themselves to go crazy. I asked my wife, I asked her a very dangerous question.
That's good.
About,
It's a good thing.
about 3 years ago, 3 years ago. I said, "Hon, what can I do to make you happier?"
Has the list stopped?
Well, it could have gone on and on and on, but
I mean,
but
really.
she said she only had one thing. She said, sometimes you get depressed, and
She said that you sometimes get depressed.
yeah,
Okay.
sometimes you get depressed, and it's hard for me to deal with. And so if you could keep yourself from getting depressed.
And letting that
And you know what I
filter
found
through the
out?
family.
I mean, that was the only thing she asked, and I found out I could.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I think.
It's a certain state of mind, a certain
Yeah,
state of wanting to be,
I
perhaps?
I
or-
think some people let themselves fall into mental illness.
Yeah, because we can dwell on things
Yeah.
so long that, we become obsessed with them, and then,
But it
things
helps.
get-
I mean, I've got all this. I mean, I have all this gratitude towards God, and I have the gospel to put things into perspective and all that. So, that helps a great deal, And then living the commandments helps. Here's an interesting figure.
Okay.
Do you know that a teenage boy is 8 times more likely to successfully commit suicide
Yeah, I've heard this.
than a girl?
Is it between the 12, and I don't have research in front of me, so I can't really speak for it.
Teens.
But yeah, it's that teens that like that
Teens.
12 to 18.
8 times more likely to commit suicide
And
successfully.
and it's interesting.
Now, that's the average. If you take the statistics of teenage boys who are not sexually active, there's no difference. No difference whatsoever.
difference. So what is it?
Well,
have you-
I think there's safety in God's commandments. I mean,
There's a grounding.
they're
yes.
there for, I grew, until I was 20 years old, I thought commandments got in the way. I thought they were,
And most of us do when we're young.
And I thought,
so-
well, they're kind of a good idea for society in general.
But not for
But
me.
not for me, because there's certain times I have to bend them, to sort of
Right,
do
so
what
you
I want,
see-
do what I
yeah,
want.
to
and it's-
survive in a certain
But
way.
but then, after I had trampled them, I didn't bend them. I broke
You
them
beat them into
three
the
ways every day,
ground, yeah.
and I got into a situation where I was really really sick of the sinful life I was leading. That I became humble and was say, all right, I guess maybe this way of living, respecting God and His commandments, people seem to be doing better with it than I am in my own life.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's.
And you went on a mission. Okay, so wait a minute. So you came.
I
let's
came.
get-
I came
you came
to
Provo,
BYU, and
and
now since this is being simulcast in video, and they see what a awful looking creature I am.
No, don't say that.
It would be hard to imagine that I was proposed to 3 times in my first 6 months at BYU, but I was. I think there was maybe a bad boy complex there.
Uh-huh.
And But see, I joined the church because I knew God wanted me. I mean, I hadn't read the Book of Mormon before I was baptized. In
And we're
fact,
gonna-
I had problems with it, and I asked if there was another book I could read that just talked about the beliefs. And they gave me Jesus the Christ by James
No,
Talmage.
great book, by the
Great
way.
book,
Loved it.
and it's been, I guess, probably the most influential book in my life.
Yeah,
'Cause-
and most of us have to read it if we go,
Yeah.
if we've been on a mission, you read that on your mission. I knew
Right.
that in the past. It's a
Right.
great book, yeah.
But still, I didn't get it. And back then, they kept talking about this church is the only true church, and I had found God in an evangelical church. And
And this is when you were searching, or is this after you met the missionaries?
well,
You're still kinda-
now we're going back to how I was prepared to find
Okay,
God,
okay.
which is,
And that's why we're going to do the
amongst-
documentary, because
okay.
there is so much to say, so much to tell.
Yeah.
And the story, again, there's so much more to your story, Jeremy. But anyhow, go ahead.
So, well, the short of it is I eventually began to appreciate what I had gotten into, and I began to appreciate how this restored gospel had so much more to offer than what I refer to as Gentile Christianity. I mean, I've got our church, and I've got Gentile Christianity. And in fact, one of the books I'd like to eventually get to is the 18 Blessings of a Jew being a Latter-day Saint. Because there's so many things I appreciate as a Jew, the reunification of Judah and Ephraim, the return of prophets, the return of temples. As
a lot
a
of
Latter-day
similarities.
Saint, I know why I'm a Jew. Jews don't know why they're Jews. I know why I'm a Jew. Had to have something to do with what I did in the pre-existence, right?
Right.
Right. Jews don't understand that. So as a Latter-day Saint, there's so many things that I appreciate as a Jew, and so that's why I look at at our church, and I don't say I don't generally use a term that we're the only true church, but I think all the others are Gentile churches.
Spoken like a Jew.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and that's, and there is a lot of
But they
similarities.
do great things. I mean,
Right.
don't knock me if you're out there.
And someone listening
It
might.
seems to me that the Lord calls other people into other religions for a reason. Recently, I found out that during the millennium, that the Mormon Church would not be the only church. We continue to have a plurality of churches.
Oh, really? I didn't realize
I did
that.
not know that.
Yeah.
And it really doesn't. I can't understand it if Christ comes
Yeah.
and rules on earth and says, yeah, I called Joseph Smith. Why everybody wouldn't become a Mormon, but apparently not, even in the millennium.
Interesting.
So I guess, not everybody's built to join the LDS Church, I guess. So, and I have so many people that do so many great things. In fact, and there's things you can do if I hadn't have become a Mormon, but I had become a Christian, I certainly would be a preacher.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, that.
Or a matchmaker.
Well, no, I would. Well, a preacher could be a matchmaker, but you don't do that. You don't. Although as a Jew, if I had my patriarchal blessing and it said the tribe of Judah, but if it said Levi, I might have actually been able to become a bishop, but that doesn't pay
That
anything.
doesn't pay.
Pays not good
It's
at
in the
all.
money.
No.
That's right. That's funny. Folks, if you're listening to us, you're listening on 1480 AM on the local dial in Utah County, or if you want to join us, you can join us on www.utahvalleylive.com. That's where we are video streaming at this time. So we'll continue with Jeremy.
Well, actually, I'm looking at the clock and I'm seeing we're about half over. And Monica's been a friend of mine since I got off my mission at BYU.
Right.
And she was asked to do a radio show. Right now, we're substituting for Pat.
Right, for Pat, the beautiful and lovely Pat
Yes.
Sheranian. Yes.
And intelligent too. And
Yes, intelligent,
because
yes.
she asked you to be a host, and so you're sort of preparing to have your own show in December.
Correct.
And you asked me to help you put it together.
I've asked you to produce
Yes,
my show.
to produce.
And
Well, first you
Jeremy is-
asked me to be your first guest.
Yes, I did.
That's what I'm doing here. But
Yes,
then
you-
as we
yes, you
started
did.
talking what you're going to do with the show, I said, well, why don't you just produce it? But, and so what we're thinking is going towards, this will be a daily show in December.
Yes, starting December, and I believe we're in the 1 o'clock hour following Pat's show.
And what we're going to do is sort of continue in the vein of what we're doing today, but of course, do a better job of it. But we're going to focus on personalities, Utah
Correct.
Valley
Utah Valley
personalities.
personalities.
And you know, since I've been since here in 1977, I know a lot of great
You know, a lot of nice people.
and so that'll be part of it, and the audience will recommend people. But I think it's only appropriate halfway through that we turn the tables a little bit. And you know, I don't know you as well as you know me, because you know, I started Don Norton, who's up in Orem, former English teacher. He likes to help people put down their personal histories. So you can go and speak to Don, and he will tape it and then transcribe it, and he'll just ask you questions, right? So we did that for a long time, more than he normally does. And by the way, he does this for free for servicemen. So if you're a serviceman and you want to get the stories of your service down, he will record you and transcribe it for free.
And again, what is his name?
Don Norton.
And can you find him online?
He's in Orem. He's in Orem? He's in Orem. He lives in Orem. They write papers about him in you know, the Daily Herald all the time. They'll mention he's not hard to find. Or
so Don Norton in Orem.
He used to be in the English department at BYU. You can always find him through there. And he actually supervised my thesis on As You Like It.
Oh.
I'd like to take about an hour on my thesis, but I won't inflict
We'll do
that on
that.
people.
We'll do that, Don.
But so you've read that, and so you sort of know.
I've read your personal history, and it's fascinating.
But I know you. I met you with my friend John Sr. You were hanging out at BYU. You had recently been crowned Miss Hispanic Utah.
Yes, I was Miss Hispanic Utah back in the day when.
And then what I really got a kick out of, because I love garlic. My family does not. In fact, once I ate something garlicky, especially my wife's family. And then I came to a family meeting, and my mother-in-law put her nose in the air and says, "What smells?" I said, "I don't smell anything. It smells kind of like old sneakers or something." And I said, I started laughing. "I think you're talking about me, Barbara Ann. You know, I just had some garlic yesterday." But I love garlic, and you were also the reigning Miss Gilroy Queen for the Gilroy Garlic Festival.
That's right.
Yeah. So that's
Those were interesting days. Yeah.
You should say the Gilroy Garlic Festival. They have everything garlic, right? Everything.
It's a huge festival, and of course, we're pushing something in California, which is not even anything to do with Utah. But there's a lot of Utah.
But it's worth a trip to go out to.
It's worth a trip to go out to, and there's a lot of performers there which come, and normally it happens in the end of July. And it's scorching hot. People pass out. People drink too much. I mean, the list goes on. But it's a lot of fun because it's a family affair.
And if you like garlic, it is the mecca for garlic.
For about
everything. 1 or 2 weeks, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And it is the funniest thing. And they even
garlic
have
shakes, garlic chocolate,
ice cream,
garlic ice cream,
everything.
And my sister, she worked for a dentist. She's a nurse anesthetist. And she had a problem with her dentist stealing her chocolate. And so she went to Gilroy Garlic Festival and brought back some garlic chocolate and left it around. And he took the bait. And he never stole her chocolate again. So
it does have an aftertaste, a very pungent aftertaste, which is really funny in some of these, like the ice cream and the shakes and the chocolate and everything. So. Yeah,
and like me, you're a convert. Now a lot of people think coming from Judaism is interesting, but just as much as you have some
I was Catholic.
I
was Catholic, raised Catholic. Yeah.
Raised Catholic, but your heritage is also Native American, isn't it?
Yes, it is. My grandmother is my grandmother's side on my dad's side. They're Cheyenne. And then my grandfather on my dad's side, they are Pueblo and Basque Spaniard from the New Mexico area. My dad is from New Mexico.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Oh,
so when it was interesting
basketball, because... no wonder you like to take karate and beat people up.
Yeah. Well, not so much anymore. I'm
not insulting the Basque people, but they have a rite of passage where the son is supposed to beat up the father to become.
I don't know about that.
Oh yeah.
I should research
an
that,
interesting
because
thing.
that
You
would
could-
be, that
remember
would explain
seeing-
a few things, probably.
Yeah.
But our family, it's kind of funny because my dad's got green blue eyes, and he looks really Spanish Spaniard, you know, and they come from the New Mexico area, and New Mexico is a wonderful, wonderful, the land of enchantment, literally, is what it's called, and it is because you have Anglo-Americans there, you have the Spanish culture, and then you have the Native American culture that just really seem to blend really well together.
And
as
plus you have
culture.
a wide geographical background.
Yep.
You've got ski resorts and you've got desert. And,
Right, you've got,
yeah.
and it's a beautiful place. And we go there often or I shouldn't say often, in the past when I was younger, we went there for family reunions and just got to meet our people, kind of.
Yeah.
And so that was always fun. But yeah, so my dad is from there, and it's a wonderful place.
So you were raised Catholic, and now I'm not sure I've ever asked you about your conversion story. So this would be
Yeah,
curious.
I was raised Catholic, and I was raised, actually, we lived in the mountains because my dad was a sheep herder and worked in the lumber mill. So my earlier years were where we lived in this little trailer with an outhouse. And I shouldn't say too much, but anyhow, we got only about another 20 minutes or so. But anyhow, so that was just a delightful place, an enchanting place to kind of grow up as a child. And then we moved from there into San Francisco. And talk about culture shock. It was so stunning as a child to see, you know, the cable cars and this and the people and it was just almost overwhelming.
Wow.
And so I felt like a caged animal, just always trying to hide and to try to, I don't know, feel safe somehow. But anyhow.
Huh.
It's kinda interesting.
So there was a negative side to the awe of moving
Yeah,
there.
there was, very much
Okay.
so, especially as a child. So anyhow, so from there we moved into the San Jose Bay Area where my dad's brothers were plasterers. We come from 5 generations of plasterers from New Mexico.
Okay.
So we had relatives in San Francisco, and then we had relatives in San Jose, and then my dad worked for his brothers, and then he had his own company, and he became a contractor as well. And so growing up there, you know, Catholic, I went to church. I always try. It was really funny because there was a point or something happened in my life where it was like 18, 19. Right after I graduated from high school, I was going to college, and I was working 3 jobs, literally 3 jobs. And there came a point where I started investigating different religions. And I liked going to church because it was more of a cultural thing, I guess. And I guess
Sure.
it was more of I think that it was familiar to me. So I did that, and then some things happened, and I thought this isn't working, and I got to look around, and you know I knew these people, and this person impressed me, so I wanted to know what their religion was, and that person impressed me, so I wanted to know that religion.
Wow.
So it was all over the board, and the last thing, which was annoying or frustrating for me, was that I looked in the yellow pages for I think it was Mormons. But you couldn't find it.
No.
Back then, it didn't cross-reference
No.
St. Mormon, you know, that kind of thing.
Right.
So I thought, well, I guess you have to be born into it or something. I don't get it. Why do you see those 2 guys,
secret
you know, walking around and knocking on people's doors for? I didn't understand it. So anyhow, so one day I was going fishing with a friend of mine, and so we had this long driveway. We had to back up, and so we were trying to get the truck out of the driveway because we were going fishing.
Right.
So anyhow, backing up the truck, and you know, it wasn't moving anywhere. So I looked in the rear view mirror, and I'm thinking, what's going on? You know, we got to go to TikTok. So I looked in the side mirror and saw him talking to the missionaries, because I could tell, because of course it's the standard attire for probably I don't know how many years.
I never saw a missionary growing up because I was from New York City, but I guess other places they're pretty visible.
You know, with the tag and the suits, and and they're young, and they're clean cut and different looking, peculiar looking, I should say. Anyhow, so I put the car in, you know, I was in park already, and I just got out of the car and I said, oh, I said, you guys are the Mormons, aren't you? And so anyhow, so that's how it kind of evolved. And then, you know, they started teaching me, and, you know, they talked about the plan of salvation, the thing about Joseph Smith, you know, but I can understand. I was just like you, I'd read the Old Testament and things like that. And these things fascinated me. Religion fascinated fascinated me. God, just, I don't know, maybe because of where I lived and people and how we deal with one another. And I was a young girl back then, and but these things were really important to me to understand, why are we here? What
Well,
is it?
this is interesting, that some people have just, some people won't ever do anything like that, and others, there's a spiritual hunger that
Yeah,
they got to satisfy.
You
They got to deal with it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the way it was for me too, because I wasn't going to stop looking until I was satisfied or
Wow.
content with what I found was for me. Now it's not for everybody. Now I did go on a mission as well. I went to Indianapolis mission. Go Hoosiers! So
Yeah.
anyhow, so I had to plug that in for the Indianaites, and so anyhow, but I thought, if I don't, because I was only a member, I think about I had to wait a year before I can go. I joined the church when I was 19 and a half or so. And then I went to Rick's College, and anyhow, so had to wait to go on the mission. And then, when I went, I thought, I don't care if anybody ever joins the church, as long as I help in some way, point somebody to some direction that will be good for them, or help. I mean, because we all struggle with so many different things in life. I mean, finances, relationships, health. I mean, you pick it. Someone's got a problem, and so does religion help?
You would figure. I mean, I always thought that obviously it had helped me, and so I wanted them to figure the way to help them is to have them join the church.
Right. I mean, definitely. And one time, it was really funny because a coworker of mine, where I worked in California, said, you use your religion as a crutch. And I says, yeah, I do. You use your alcohol as a crutch. So, you got alcohol, I got religion. Okay, so we're okay. So anyhow, but you're right. So we do tend to use things, and I shouldn't say, I mean, it was just more of a facetious comment but we were bantering about this whole thing. And but it is somewhat true. And what's wrong with a positive crutch?
Yeah.
There's negative crutches, there's positive crutches. And so whatever can get you through life and to get you through this journey, because we're all on a journey and it's not always nice. And so, but there are beautiful things in life as well. And so, and if there's something that can help you understand yourself, people, and God, or whatever it is that you aspire to be, and if it's religion, and I thought, well, if religion helps people, then I'm doing a good thing. So it wasn't really so much I mean, of course it would, I delighted when people joined the church, and I became really good friends with them, and I saw their lives change.
Did you have
success?
Well, yeah, and when I say success, did you help people come into the church?
Well, it was really interesting because yes, I did,
Okay.
And there was people that joined the church, and they were baptized, and they were good members, and some people that just surprised me, in many ways. That one woman just came to us and says, "I need to be baptized," and it's kind of like you came to the missionary. So that was one story, but the most, I guess, the most. I mean, to me, the heartfelt story that I can tell that's important to me would be when, at the end of my mission, when I was in an area where we lived in this complex with a bunch of old folks. Mm-hmm. We were the young girls, the young sister missionary, and I had an opportunity to to open up this area. The mission president wanted me to open up the area. So I went there. We traveled there. We found an apartment, and this place just felt right. And and it was like an X, this complex was like an X. And in the center of this X was this like a community area where all these retired old people were. And these people were really, really old. They weren't like, in their 60s. These people were like 80s, 90s,
okay.
And really, active, but yet, disabled in some respect.
Sure.
So it was really hard for me because when I was living, I became such good friends with these people, a lot of them, and obviously a lot of them are gone by now, and wonderful, wonderful people. And they didn't really, of course, we talked religion and things like that, but more than anything, we did things for them. Like I would clip the toenails of this man that was blind. And it didn't make me special or anything like that. My companion wouldn't do it. He liked me. We had conversations. I enjoyed sitting literally at his feet and listening to his stories. And so so those are the relationships that I will never, ever forget. Not so much, I mean, of course, the ones that
Right.
you really, they join the church, that kind of thing, but it's the touching of people that you were kind of a conduit to something special between them and humanity.
Yeah.
And so,
I-
yeah, I will never, ever forget those people.
I
to this
baptized
day.
a couple. They were 83 and 79.
Oh, did you?
In Marseille, France. They had been very active in their religion, and so it was.
What religion were they?
They're Catholic, yeah.
Catholic. And how? Well, what happened?
The resorts. Well, they met. They went. They were young at heart, and they were still quite active, and they had a visiting aircraft carrier dock in Marseille. I went to French-speaking Switzerland, southeastern France, and they met a member of the church there, and he was so nice, and they were so interested. They decided to. I think, actually, we got a card, to go see them, and they just.
The cards, yeah.
Just the way things go, and it was pretty wonderful. In fact, when I said goodbye, when I left, he kissed me on the mouth, which
That's very Frenchish.
Yeah, it's very French. 83,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, it is.
so he was he had been there since the turn of the century,
So-
and I thought, well, that's really kind of nice. So that was.
Yeah.
That
And
was
it's very
warm.
special. I mean, when people change, when you see the transformation, and that's why I think your story is compelling, and that's why I think that it'll be important to have that documentary, because when you see people change, and it's so, I can't explain it.
Yeah.
It's not so much the physical change. Of course, there is a physical change to
Right.
when you see people come or change in a positive manner.
Well, I remember
But
for
there's
me.
something.
See, the biggest change for me wasn't when I joined the church, but a few weeks before. Because again, I had sinned to such excess that my soul had gone sick of it, and I was really brought low and humbled.
Mhm.
And a friend asked me to go to a non-denominational church with him. He said, well, you can just go for a ride. It's in the mountains by a lake. It's really pretty. You don't even have to go in. Because this is Pat Fioli was his name, out of Saratoga Springs. And he had met me in what was referred to in our college as the canteen, like a snack bar, something like that. And he had become a born-again Christian. And I was saying, well, yeah, I mean, it'd be nice if life went on after this, but it doesn't. But I could see wanting to think it does,
Uh-huh.
so it's not so depressing. And a lot of things would be nice, but it's not real. And so he had worked on me a long time, but I liked him. He liked me, and so he brought me to this church. And I think we've run out of time.
No, actually, we have 5 minutes.
Oh, 5 minutes.
Yeah, the clock is ticking and we're doing
Oh,
good.
okay. And so anyhow, eventually he happened to ask me at a very vulnerable time, and I went with him, and it was a non-denominational evangelical church, and the sermon was how the gospel of Christ was here to help us love one another. And I had really messed up my love relationships, and I thought, well, maybe it is a good way. But I didn't think I'd ever believe in God. In fact, somebody came up and said, well, isn't God great? And I said, well, I don't really believe in a God, but I sort of believe in a right and a wrong, and a good and a bad. Maybe for you, God is the things that are right and good, and Satan's the things that are bad and wrong. And they said, well, what do you think of Jesus, brother? I said, well, I'm Jewish, so I don't really believe in
So were you an
Christ.
atheist?
I was an atheist.
Hardcore atheist.
I was
just
an
did not
atheist.
believe in God.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought everybody was fooling themselves. And so he said, well, have you ever read the Bible about the prophecies of God? And I actually took a AP English in high school, and we were supposed to read the Bible, but I read the Cliff Notes instead. True story. Read the Cliff Notes of the Bible instead of reading the Bible. And so when he asked me, I told him I had read the Cliff Notes. He said, because there's a chapter here that talks about prophecy of what the Messiah would be like, and it's written long before Christ was born, but maybe it would help you understand why we think he's Christ. And I thought chapter. You know, every other book I've ever read, a chapter is 10, 20, 30, 40 pages long. So I thought, well, how long is this chapter? Meaning pages and pages and pages. And he said, well, it's only a half a chapter, like I should know Bible chapters are short, which I didn't. I said, well, I can read anything for half a page. And so I started reading the 53rd chapter of Isaiah, and as it talked about this character with Christ-like images or tendencies, sort of going to death, to slaughter, death as a lamb, and being buried with,
right.
I forget the term now. Boy, I should have read it before I came. But I stopped and I said, "Are you sure this was written before Christ was born?" It's, "Oh yeah, this was written hundreds of years, like 600 years before he was born." Well, it kind of sounds like Christ, which the only thing I knew about Christ was from movies on the TV during Christmas and Easter. So I went back, and I think it was, with his stripes we are healed. I really thought that was just a Christian concept, of atonement.
What, the guilt trip or what?
Well, that somebody would suffer for us.
Right.
I mean, I thought that was a crazy Christian idea.
But a lot of people think that there's a lot of guilt tripping to that statement.
Well,
the stripes and the this and the...
Maybe. I mean, I didn't look at it as a guilt trip. I just looked at it as a fact that this was a prophecy of what Christ would be like, and so I just wondered, could I be wrong? And as I wondered that, and I mean, there was a ton of things that prepared me to do this. I had a motorcycle accident where I flew over 2 cars, and
you had some near-death.
Oh, I had 4 accidents where I should have been killed. I had a girlfriend that broke my heart. I went on a crazy wild spree at college to sleep with as many different people as I could to forget about her, and that eventually didn't make me happy. And so all this stuff led me to a moment of humility. And I just wondered with an open heart, could I be wrong? And the Spirit just poured into me like molten lead or something like that, and gave me a testimony strong enough to hopefully last an eternity.
I think it will.
And so that's what changed me.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about more because the documentary that we're doing will actually feature other Jewish.
Oh, by the way,
people.
I mentioned that my father's a communist. I've been called by the Utah papers as an ultra-conservative.
Yes,
so
Jeremy
so
did
I'm
have a
way
change of heart.
too right-wing. I want people to understand that I've gone.
Yes, you are.
I'm faithful to the founding fathers.
Yes, because that's an exciting story as well. So many people to thank today. Pat Sherinian for allowing us to step into her hour, and also to all of you who allowed us to share lunch with you. Also, we want to thank Provo Creative and Peter Hansen and Kent of UtahValleyLive.com. Again, you can find the show streamed via the internet, wherever you are, at www.utahvalleylive.com. And that's kind of nice because a lot of people want to know what's going on in the Provo area. A lot of people that have left who have want to know what's going on here still. They can find that at UtahValleyLive.com. Again, I want to thank Jeremy for coming on.
Well, thank you, Monica. And if they want to get in touch with the radio station, I love to do firesides. I promise I'll be better organized than I was today.
That's right.
And
you did great.
I love to share my story.
And thank you so much. 1480 AM on the AM dial. Thank you, and join us again.